Ask an Anarchist. The game, Skyrim. The question, Imperials or Stormcloaks? Welcome back, everyone. We are doing a new series of episodes. I'm going to try and do one once every week, maybe once every 2 weeks. We'll see how it goes, but it's going to be called Ask an Anarchist, where I will take a game, a comic book movie, an anime, a manga, whatever, and I will attempt to look at it and explain it and decide on the questions that are presented in that medium, how I would do things as an anarchist. So today we're looking at Skyrim. The question, of course, is Stormcloaks and Imperials. And I think that for a lot of gamers, during our many hours of questing and Skyriming all over, I'm sure that many of us arrived at that critical junction in the game where you are confronted with a choice, right? Do you help the Stormcloaks, a xenophobic group of warriors who seek to expel a foreign invader, an occupier, from their homeland and restore their right to their own brand of religious worship? Or do you seek to keep the empire together, where strength is in numbers and disunity could mean the death of you all? Without wasting too much time, I'm going to get right into it and give you my answer, but what I want you to stick around for is the reasoning. So, in my first playthrough, when I was confronted with this, I chose the Stormcloaks. And philosophically speaking, and that needs to be made very, very clear, philosophically speaking, I support their endeavor over the Imperial army. But I also support it from a practical side, in regards to their beef and also the Empire's beef with the Thalmor. And I'll explain the philosophical part first, and then I'll get to the practical side second. So, so aside from the cliche of having the blonde, light-skinned people being awfully mean to the people who are literally called dark elves, okay, that stereotype aside, the thing is, racism can be fixed, okay? Racism can be fixed, but religious freedom, once lost, cannot be gained back except through violent revolution. Hence the war, right? This is the war of the Stormcloaks versus the Imperials, and why they're trying to kick the Imperials out. The Empires are living up to the accords they signed, which banned the worship of Talos. And for me, as an anarchist and as a practitioner somewhat of nonviolence or radical nonviolence, this is something I'd like to avoid, more war and bloodshed. And religious freedom, much like hate speech, must be protected. And for the same reasons, too. So religion and hate speech, while certainly not the same thing, there's a lot of people that say otherwise these days, both have as their foundation radical ideas. Like Marxism in its time, radical ideas are considered so because they tend to go against people's rational and or natural inclinations. Okay? So what I mean by that is that nobody is born racist, contrary to some people's belief. Nobody is born religious. These are things learned from others. These are learned ideas. These are learned behaviors. These are learned thoughts. A rational mind, and let me stop right there and define what I mean as rational. I don't mean this in a positive or negative connotation. What I mean strictly by a rational mind is the using the senses to perceive and interpret the world around you and explain the world around you. That's all I mean. So the rational mind tends or doesn't appear to immediately jump to, I bet a divine being created this thing type of conclusion. You know what I mean? That, like I said, that's a learned behavior. That's a learned thought process. which is fine. I'm not knocking it. It's fine. It should absolutely be allowed. People must be allowed to worship how they will, so long as that worship does not involve the trampling of others' liberty, right? And that's where the xenophobia from the Stormcloaks tends to come in the Nords generally, especially as we talk about their relationship with the Dark Elves. Not cool. So what does this mean? It means Nords, worship Talos all you want, but don't be dicks to the Khajiits and the Dark Elves. Don't kick them out of your towns. Don't make them live in the slums. That's not cool, but you need to be able to worship how, where, and what you may. Now, also, from a practical perspective, which is what I said I'd get into next. Okay, so let's talk about the practical perspective. Why should we allow the Stormcloaks to worship how they will and therefore break away from the Empire as opposed to keeping them a part of the Empire? Well, firstly, the Stormcloaks are fighting the Imperials. But this is actually an opportunity for partnership. So, as the saying goes, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? The Empire is currently suffering at the hands of the Thalmor as well. Skyrim has its religious liberty being trampled on by the Thalmor via the Empire, but it's really by the Thalmor. And they're seeking to snuff out Talos worship, right? So by having the Empire relinquish control of Skyrim, it gives both Skyrim and the Empire plausible deniability regarding what each of those two territories are plotting in regards to pushing the Thalmor out of their respective lands. So if those two territories are conspiring together under the guise of the whole, right, as in they're not fractured, the Empire, the sheer numbers that would be required to make that happen would likely lead to leaks or covers being blown. And of course, once the Thalmor knew that the Empire was using Skyrim as a covert or an overt means to attack the Thalmor, you've got all-out war again, and you probably don't have some kind of accords being signed. You have the Thalmor just completely running the show overtly from that time forward. And obviously, neither Skyrim nor the Imperials would benefit from that. So obviously the two could still communicate via courier and espionage, but because the two share a common enemy, they are more likely to work together over any other possible combination of the three nations involved. In other words, the Thalmor aren't going to come to and work with the Nords to crush the Empire, right? Because, I mean, that really doesn't solve the Nords' problem. And neither will the Empire work with the Thalmor to crush Skyrim. This is made clear in the main quest line. It's pretty obvious the Empire does not like the Thalmor. They kind of just do what they're told, but they're not going to be working with the Thalmor against their own people, as long as they can help it. That's pretty much made clear. And so having Skyrim and the Empire work to fight the Thalmor on separate fronts is a unique twist on one of the oldest tricks in the book, right? Divide and conquer. Only in this case, the divide comes from not necessarily the divide between Skyrim and the Empire, but rather the Thalmor now having to contend differently, because they're fighting two very different kinds of opponents, but from the Thalmor having to contend differently against two separate opponents, right? So now they're having to fight the Nords and the Imperials separately, and they have no chance of trying to catch one by capturing the bad guys of another, right? So in other words, since Skyrim and the Empire would not be working together, capturing a Nord only hurts the Nords. It doesn't hurt the Imperials. And capturing an Imperial and then interrogating him doesn't hurt the Nords, right? So it's the left hand is not knowing what the right hand is doing purposefully, right? And that's what I mean by divide and conquer. And then also another thing to bring up in regards to this concept is the potential for a domino effect is going to be huge. Especially since we know that there are other territories like Hammerfell, for instance, who are not too fond of the Thalmor either. And so if they catch wind that the Empire on one side and Skyrim on another, and then who knows who else are getting involved in this, you might start seeing other nations who are anti-Thalmor getting involved in this fight, and you might see the Thalmor fall. Now, secondly, here's what also increases their chance of success. We're talking a pure numbers perspective here. The Nords who want to fight for the Imperials, right? We know there are Nords who are pro-Empire. Those Nords who want to fight for the Imperials and fight the Thalmor are already in the Imperial military, right? But would Nords who despise the Empire fight for the Empire, even if it means getting rid of the Thalmor? Likely not. However, if you give Skyrim its independence, Ulfric is free to call on the warriors of Skyrim to their next battle, the one against the Thalmor. Nords conscripted to fight for the Empire, knowing the Empire does not have their best interest at heart, are more likely to abandon post rather than stay and fight. And that's even if they show up for active duty in the first place, right? After all, a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. But if they have Ulfric leading the charge, with a Nord ruler leading them, not only are they more likely to fight, they're more likely to fight from the heart. They are defending their homeland against a foreign invader for their freedom and their religion. And that is why, as an anarchist, I agree philosophically and practically with the Stormcloaks. Thanks, everyone. I hope you enjoyed watching. If you liked this video, please leave a comment in the comment section below. Also, like, share, and subscribe. I'd like to continue the conversation with you here in the comments or on Twitter or on Facebook. Links are also in the description below, and I will see you guys next time.